Okay, so ignore the illustrious lights. Right, we're not in Spain or anything like that. It's just my bog standard back garden. Now, what I wanted to do is slightly change it up. I've been constantly going on about different energy systems, CP systems, the anaerobic, aerobic, and I just wanted to really just give a little bit more insight into what I mean, why I've been fundamentally targeting them on my CV type training that I've been doing to try and hit different aspects of different parts of a game that someone might be participating in. Now, just to make a little bit more sense, and it will reflect then in terms of why we need to recover, why it's then important to do the things that you do so you can apply them to the game and then work out what sort of ratios that these three systems would work best for. So the CP system, or the creatine phosphate one, is all about that power, that initial burst, all right? That's 6 to 10 seconds, whether it's you doing weights, it could be like tuck jumps super fast, all right? It could be medicine ball slams, whatever. You could be pitching a javelin where you need that immediate blast of energy to carry out the exercise that you're doing. Now this part again in itself, you tend to work it in terms of this ATP bit. Again, it's just the energy that you need to supply to the cell so you can actually then put into practice in the actual event itself. And that recovery part is what you need your creatine side for. And that comes then down to your nutrition in terms of your amino acids and everything that you eat from your meats or your source of protein that provides you with that. So that's the sort of bit that you target. So when you're doing sort of speed work, all right, that's the perfect system. Keep it short and sweet, but more reps that you do, make sure you've got that recovery time behind, all right? Because you'll notice it when you're doing it. If you say do 10 sprints of 30 meters, if you're only giving yourself a 20 second recovery, you're noticeably going to see your performance dip as you go on. So it's imperative to get that's 1 to 10, 1 to 15 ratio, all right, in terms of recovery. So whatever time you're doing, so if it's 5 seconds, feel free to push it out to the 50 seconds or give it a minute before you go again, all right? So it's imperative that you get that recovery time right. Then you go into the anaerobic. The anaerobic is all about your immediate bit, which is called acidosis, which gives you that horrible feeling in the legs as the lactic acid is built up. It's because you've got excess CO2 in your muscle, which the lactate or your energy system is trying to remove. And that's the bit when you're burning energy, so your carbs, through no use of oxygen. And that's the bit when you're sort of running and when you're sort of powering off, you usually have about a 2-minute window. So again, your recovery time is important to make sure you hit that time to allow that your body to try and remove that CO2 to then go again. You then carry it on. So if you imagine this massive curve, it's super steep for your CP system, and then it's slightly less for your anaerobic, and then you're going into that transition from burning carbs into your fats, and that's where it goes from your anaerobic into then eventually your aerobic system. All right, and the more you sort of do it when it's quite uncomfortable, when you're going almost like they call it a race pace, you can usually about 20-30 minutes you're hitting an RP of 15 where you're not really talking too well. It's like 1 or 2 words. You can't hold a conversation with someone. If you do, you're like trying to blow whilst trying to get out a conversation with them. All right, that's the sort of example that you're trying to do. So that's what you mean by an RPE. How well are you talking? If you're hitting that, the more you sort of push through, aim head for it. So if you hit a comfort zone, it feels uncomfortable, but you think there's a bit more in the tank. That's when you start to push it. The final bit then is your aerobic, where you can go on for hours, and that's where you sort of transition into your sort of using your fats and your carbs, and that's why it's a mixture of what people use when they do, say, half marathons. That's where they have like pasta camps or stuff like that, where people need to just gorge themselves on the carbs to allow that fuel system there, where you're burning it, keep it going, keep it through, transiting through. So your threshold's now going towards a 75% aerobic before it's 25% anaerobic, because your body's always generating CO2, but it's how quick you can get it out. And that's when you find that transition, and therefore working those 3 different systems means that you can sort of transition to it. So when you do CP, you're thinking about super sharp, short little sprints. If you're using anaerobic with a slightly lesser recovery time, so it could be 10 300 meters, and you want to aim for them to be between, say, 45 seconds to a minute. If the when you have that rest, give it at least 2 minutes, 1.5 to 2 minutes is what I'd suggest. You can chop and change it, you can add a little bit more if you want, but the point is in that performance, because you're going at it to get that system, that anaerobic, high end, which leaves lactic acid, that horrible jelly feeling, work through that to transition through. And the aerobic then is that sort of longer distance, longer winded, all right, in terms of trying to keep that intensity going. And the more you sort of do it and you hit that, you can almost feel yourself going through the gears. When you start a run, you tend to bolt off and you go through that CP, which doesn't last long before you almost hit the next part, and you almost do feel that transition in your body, or you go into that second phase and you're thinking, right, I can keep going, and it starts, you can really start breathing a lot deeper inside, and that's when the intensity parts might drop. Or you just try and think about positive thinking and push through, keep going. If you've got a dip, you dip, forget about it. Fatigue will naturally do that to you, which is why when you do the CP, you'll notice the fatigue kicking a lot quicker. The anaerobic without the oxygen kicks in just as quick, so to speak, after a couple of minutes. And then the more you're trying to push through, you really try and test that CP. So the more you do it, just up it in little increments each time, and you'll be sweet as a nut. That's what I mean by the systems. I know it's short, sharp, sweet, and going on, but it's just to give the people an idea as to how you can then reflect it with the nutrition that you eat. Sweet as.